Fabius Bile. Originally just Fabius, and also known as the Spider and the Primogenitor, is a Chaos Space Marine. Prior to the defeat at the Horus Heresy, he was a Lieutenant Commander and Chief Apothecary of the Emperor's Children. He is now an infamous mad scientist, specializing in genetic manipulation and the creation of enhanced warriors. Unlike most of the Emperor's Children, Bile does not follow Slaanesh. Instead, he devotes himself to science and research into the creation of Space Marines. Fabius was born on Terra to Europan nobility. As a child, he learned the art of flesh crafting from one of his family's servants. Among his first experiments was modifying mice to duel each other in elaborate garb, and was inconsolable when they disobeyed his orders and killed one another. Shortly after, he was inducted into the 3rd Legion. Fabius was the sole member of the original Legion's command structure amongst the 200 survivors of the Blight that caused organ degeneration in the Emperor's Children as a result of a Selenite plot. Despite this, he did not seek promotion, being instead dedicated to his work to reverse the disease. He was nicknamed the Spider by the other members of the Legion. By the end of the Great Crusade, Fabius had risen to Chief Apothecary of the Emperor's Children and was known for his reclusive and inquisitive nature. As the heresy and betrayal of the Emperor's Children loomed, Fabius managed to convince Fulgrim that he could improve upon the Legion's gene seed and finalize their quest for perfection. To this end, Fabius began experimenting on both Emperor's Children and Blood Angels, wounded or slain in the War on Murder. This began Fabius's descent into corruption and madness, as his experiments became ever more extreme. During the Horus Heresy, the Imperium became divided. Fabius was held in high esteem by both Horus and Erebus for his skills in genetic research. Omegon was told by Horus to give Fabius the stolen data from the Primarch project. However, the data Omegon gave Bile was purposefully flawed, so that the traitors would waste manpower and resources, while it would be impossible to gain any benefits from it. Following the Dropsite massacre, Fabius trawled the ancient choral conclaves on Istvan V, scavenging knowledge left there by the war singers of the Istvan system. Fabius joined several Emperor's Children commanders, such as Lucius and Marius Virosian, in using extreme torture to exorcise the demon that was inhabiting Fulgrim. Also, at his Primarch's demand, Fabius produced his first cloned Primarch, creating a replica of Ferrus Manus himself, which Fulgrim tried to again convert to his cause and killing him after he refused. Fabius created multiple clones of Ferrus, all refusing Fulgrim before being killed. Fabius proved vital for the Emperor's Children during the Heresy, reviving both Eidolon and Lucius at the demand of their Primarch. As the war ground on, his experiments became more and more depraved, torturing captive Space Marines of both Allied and enemy legions to give birth to his first generation of Terrata. During the end of the Heresy, Fabius took part in his legion's attack on Terra, although neither he or his legion were actually involved in the siege of the Imperial Palace. Instead, they attacked the general population. In the Legion's unrestrained fervour, millions of Terra's civilians were murdered. Bile used the opportunity to perform horrific experiments on captives. Human victims were rendered down to create special drugs which heightened the legionaries' feeling of ecstasy. It is possible that terror served as the first example of Fabius's subsequent atrocious experiments on entire planetary populations. During the Siege of Terra, Fabius had an epiphany, seeing the uselessness of what the traitor legions were trying to accomplish. He left Terra before the death of Horus, along with a retinue of altered followers. The act incensed Fulgrim, who put a bounty on his head. Bile was meanwhile hunted by the Salamanders and narrowly escaped their wrath. In the centuries following the Heresy, Fabius Bile travelled the galaxy, offering his services to various planetary lords or rebel leaders, in return for prisoners, the flesh tithe, or ancient technical library. Many of these ambitious overlords came to regret allowing Bile's experimentations on their people, as the results of his atrocities became apparent. His creations have also infiltrated many Imperial planets, helping to hide evidence of his activity and redirect potential enemies. Despite his infamy, Bile still adheres to a twisted version of the old Imperial truth, believing that only the foolish and weak seek the comfort of gods and seeking scientific understanding above all else. Bile eventually ended up leading a group of affiliated apothecaries from various legions known as the Consortium, based on Europe. Looking for a key to stop the decay of his body and achieve immortality, he was a key participant in the Shattering, the attack by the Emperor's children on the Eldar craft world Laganath in 764 M34. During the attack, it became apparent that his former acolyte, Oleander Coe, and a group of Harlequins engineered the events to try and convince Fabius to lead the Emperor's children once more. However, Fabius refused to become a war leader and instead insisted that his work would continue. For a time, he was tutored in the dark arts of manipulating the flesh in the Tower of Flesh, a homunculi stronghold of the Coven of the 13 Scars. This eventually led him tutoring his fellow Emperor's children in these dark arts, which led to Bile coming into conflict with the 13 Scars at the Battle of Belial IV in 993 M37. The Coven slaughtered those who Bile tutored, and surgically ensured that Fabius himself could never speak of what he had learned. Due to his original genetic flaw, Bile's body quickly deteriorates and dies. He has managed to sustain his life over the centuries by creating clones of himself and transferring his own brain into them.